So the only angle I can think of is like, oh, these people don't actually like won't care about the graphics because they love retro video games so much anyway. But I don't know. I'm not sure I buy that.
Should have
Yeah.
released an 8-bit version of the game then.
Yeah, it's yeah.
Final Fantasy 1 graphics.
Yeah.
8-bit version of the soundtrack might go hard though.
Yeah.
That's true. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Outback Gamehouse, Lord of the Rings, Heroes of Middle-earth. We have a special guest here with us today, Swag. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be on here.
Yeah, so if you guys don't know Swag, he's a content creator for Lord of the Rings, Heroes of Middle-earth. You may have heard of him, you may not have heard of him, but it's a pleasure to have you on. We'll jump straight in. Obviously, now at the time of the recording, Elrond, his second coming, his return has finally come. So a lot of people have been waiting for it, either players that have had Elrond hoping to star him up, and also I think most free-to-play players as well have finally unlocked him, at least the ones that have been playing from the start.
Yeah.
So it's been a big change in terms of, guilds and raid scores and stuff like that. Like we've seen a massive increase in, well, obviously we've only had chapter 1, but we've had a lot of free-to-play players that didn't have Elrond now with access to Elrond, and their scores have just, almost doubled in chapter 1.
I think we've got nearly 20 million more points in chapter 1 so far.
20 million.
I think roughly around that.
that's okay.
Yeah, it's insane.
That's a lot.
Because we prior to his second release, we only had 14 players, I think so, with Elrond.
So how many people did you have get Elrond? The remaining
22 players. So more than half of our guild are now with Elrond.
We had 20 people get Elrond, but our chapter 1 scores I think only increased by about 8 million-ish, but that's still a massive jump for us. We are well on our way, I think, we're well on our way to getting closer to reaching box 4.
Yeah, and that too. We were hitting box 4 prior, but I'd say there's a big chunk of guilds now.
Yeah, that'll
be, ready for box 4 now with Elrond.
Yep.
Because, I mean, there are other good teams, but
it's really Elrond. That's
I think the main, Elrond, Rivendell Elves, they're hands down the best.
Yeah.
Best team in the game. Like maybe Black Beast may come in and change that. I don't.
Yeah, nobody has the viability across all 4 chapters.
Yeah, that's true.
It's really Rivendell is kind of top of the list, and I'm sure Black Beast may have something to do with that. It depends on probably on the kits of the other Dol Guldur allies as to who and who else you slot in there with him. It's just going to be a 3-man team, and then obviously the Fellowship.
Yeah. So we've spoken about it in our previous podcast. Like if you look at Gandalf's kit, he kind of has an answer for each of the chapters.
Yeah.
Yep. He is 100% the solve.
Yeah. And we don't know if they're going to come out with 2 other Fellowship characters. I imagine they probably will. And, that's just going to make that team even stronger. Balin's another one, an interesting one I've been keeping an eye on, because those guys have also got kind of a solution for each of the chapter within each of the 3 kits. And I think I've heard, I personally haven't built my dwarves or, I think apart from Gimli, I haven't built anyone else up. So I haven't tried Balin dwarves, but I've heard they're probably the second or third best raid team at the moment.
Hmm.
But
I mean, I think it's just because the faction is probably the second biggest faction so far, that they just have more variety of characters to plug and play, essentially, which is probably why they do so well.
You have a lot of options.
Yeah.
I think it also makes thematically a little bit of sense, and I assume that they were probably intending that for the
Yeah.
dwarves to be pretty decent at the mines.
Well, I mean, like it makes sense that the Fellowship and Gandalf thematically, and it kind of makes sense with their shattered timeline that Balin. It also makes sense, but also the other dwarves as well.
Yep.
But yeah, so yeah, I think like in terms of Elrond, that revive just makes that team a level above everyone else. It's like you've got the last kill or whatever that Balin has. It's okay.
Yeah. I thought it would be better than what it actually is.
Yeah. Oh, I haven't maxed out his passive for his extra heals. I've still got a lot of level 6 abilities to go with that team. Purples is my main killer.
Yep.
Purples is killing everyone.
Yeah. You can't intentionally focus down Balin. Like you can't force the damage onto Balin. So right when you go into shadow form of the Balrog and he's gonna one hit somebody, which by the way, I thought it wasn't supposed to one hit somebody unless they have that Shadow's Embrace or the dark hug debuff or whatever it's called. But I guess he just does the same amount of damage no matter what, whether you have that Bane or not. People tell me that he often targets Balin, but that has not been my experience, I guess.
No, I've had him target other people apart from Balin. I've heard Bifur can be useful because he's the only one really that you use with Balin that can give out a provoke, or is it a taunt? I think it's a provoke to the highest health. And usually, sometimes it depends how built your Rumal is, but usually it is Balin that gets that provoke. So I was hoping one of the Sylvan brothers kind of gave it provoke to, like that would have made sense. But at the moment, without any sort of intervention, it's a bit of RNG whether he gets that.
Yeah.
KO.
What ends up happening is I will run Gimli with that team as well often. And so because Gimli's 7 stars for me and he has so much armor compared to everybody else, and the additional plus 20% armor that Balin's lead gives to all the dwarves, he's so tanky that he's the one who always ends up with those provokes from Bifur for me. Right. So maybe that'll change when the star levels sort of even out. But that kind of brings up something that I think a lot of people are curious about, was that they kind of keep releasing tanks that don't have taunts or provokes. And Nick mentioned this in the interview about how when he first came in, he was like, I don't like provokes. They're useless. And that he came around to the idea on provokes versus taunt and how good provokes are, just because from a game design perspective, he doesn't want to have to keep coming up with like levels of taunt that can't be superseded, right? Yeah. And so maybe there's just like there's hesitance about it because they prefer not to have one whole ability always just carved out for, okay, here's my provoke taunting ability. And I don't know, maybe they're just trying to be more creative with how tanks sort of interact with teams as a whole and the way in which they can provide that sort of cover for their team.
I think probably one of the most unique tanks I've seen in a Hero Collector game is Yo-Yo in MSF, where she will basically ping the enemy team, whoever goes next, and inflict weaken on them or offense down, whatever. But yeah, she
MS
doesn't actually have a taunt or provoke or anything
Right.
like that.
I think MSF went through a similar kind of
Yeah.
period where they were releasing tanks for each kind of team with a traditional kind of taunt on them, and they were trying different things. Yo-Yo was a good one where, yeah, you're right. It was kind of weakening the opposing enemies rather than trying to strengthen your own. And then they had tanks like Rimmel who would provide defense and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You had tanks like what's her name, Lilial or whatever it is, that would provide
stealth to everyone.
to
Yeah.
everyone.
Hand sentry, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, which is kind of, I guess, a quasi way of putting taunt on yourself by getting everyone else stealth. But yeah, I mean, I think they're gonna eventually come back to provokes and taunts because there's only so much you can do.
Right. So maybe they're just getting it out of the way now. I do think the like Black Beast not also being a tank and not having a taunt to provoke is interesting because of his, binding mechanic.
Yeah.
So we have to wait to see what Charu and Rekka, what their kits are. But I also imagine, just like Rumel and Orphan, they aren't going to be handing out taunts or provokes to the Black Beast.
Well, Black Beast is kind of like, if you don't kill him early, he's kind of just going to steamroll you. But if you do attack him early, he's still going to cause quite a bit of trouble for you.
Yeah. So then it becomes like a, how do you protect him enough until he can ramp up?
Yeah.
So like, who do you slot in? Or maybe it'll just be taken care of with Charu and Rekka kits, but who do you slot in that will like give him enough cover so that he can at least get like a few stacks of feast rolling, and then it just becomes, him steamrolling everybody else on the other team. At least that's my read on it. I guess we'll see when we actually get it next week, right?
I am interested to see what the other two, or that Dolgador team, what their kits are going to be like, because I'm eager to get Black Beast, but I'm also wary in terms of getting, we spoke about it before the podcast in terms of the release methods, and back to back to back marquees is a bit of a killer. That comes to a point, like, unless you're a big spender, to kind of keep up with that is a bit tough. I'm wondering whether it's enough to just get him, get Black Beast, and kind of potentially skip the other two. Because it feels like, we're going down a path where we'll have, and I think Nick mentioned it in the AMA, not so much the Torna questionnaire, but on the Reddit AMA, I believe he mentioned something about each of the Nazguls having their kind of spotlight where they'll have their own kind of team and stuff like that. But I imagine maybe end of next year we'll get Witch King and there's a super squad with all the Nazguls.
Yeah. Pretty similar to like Apocalypse in MSF, yeah.
So I'm not convinced that you're just going to be able to get Black Beast by himself. I think the binding mechanic he has is pretty integral, and that you're going to end up needing the two Dol Guldur allies as well. But the nice thing is that we're going to be able to, CG HoME mentioned that we will have the kits for the other two marquee characters coming in November before the end of the Black Beast marquee. So we should be seeing those before like the marquee ends, so you can kind of make a decision: is this a team I want to skip or not, right? Hopefully they also announce something to do with the legendary, and then if that fits into the a Dol Guldur team, then I think that'll shift a lot of people's opinions about whether they go for the Dol Guldur team or not, right? If it's something like the Necromancer and he kind of is a plug and play, slots into a Dol Guldur team, right? Then I think a lot of people are going to shell out for it for that particular team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think in general that a lot of people will probably buy the Dol Guldur team just because it's the edgy character and it's just cool kind of thing.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
I think a lot of players have been waiting for a shadow
Yeah.
team. We had Heradrim, but in general, it's just been light.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. That too. Finally, shadow characters. Yeah.
This will be the first team in a while that hasn't been like sold or billed as, specific to a raid of the chapter or chapter of the raid rather.
Yeah.
So that probably has to come with its own sort of power creep levels as well.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just enough to do this is the first Nazgul and it's a little bit of a shadow and we're going back to shadow characters now, and so people will be eager for that. But my guess is it will also be somewhat power crept, at least compared to the raid teams that they were releasing.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's pretty evident, like just seeing his kit and just seeing all the wording compared to all the other kits. It's just like, okay.
Going into novella mode.
We're starting to get wall of text kits, aren't we?
Yeah.
It took a while for MSF to get to that stage where you're just scrolling through the passive.
Yeah.
I don't know if MSF has ever got to the point that Swogor got into, but it's straight up like pages long sometimes.
Really?
I know.
It really is.
It's ridiculous.
It's
so hard
bad
to parse. And figuring out how everything interacts with everything else. And then, of course, like players are doing a lot of QA, right? And being like, okay, well, does this particular interaction that they've sort of laid out here, does this work exactly as the way that they've worded it and intended? And
yep,
the kits become, 3 chapters long, then you have to spend a lot of time figuring that stuff out.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't Rumel and Orpham's kit though were fairly simple, which was really nice. They're simple but effective.
Yeah.
I like, especially Orphans.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have liked an AoE on that team, but he hits hard. I haven't got mine up to the level, and I'm hoping he becomes similar to how he was in the marquee events, because I think it was Rumel's marquee event where, it would have been Rumel's marquee event because Orphan is the freebie that you get. He was coming in and nuking enemies, just one-shotting. I was just like, wow.
Yeah. I've heard people can hit like, it was either 22 or 27k. I want to say it was 22k crits.
Jesus, that's hard.
Him. Yeah. So I think he scales pretty intensely.
That's Frodo levels. That's really good, actually.
Yeah, I think he's probably going to be one of the best damage dealers in the game. And once he becomes farmable, a few months down the line, and you can get him to 7 stars, he's probably a good. I mean, that whole team is probably a good thing to pick up. Just you don't have to keep them together, but I think they do have plug and play viability, and it's in a multi-squad PvP type setting. If he's I've got an extra damage dealer that can just absolutely, mess the other team up.
Yeah.
I don't mind these 3-man teams that they're coming out with.
I like them
because it allows for a bit of flexibility, theory crafting, and stuff like that. And especially that team, like they're not locked into each other. There's synergy, obviously, but they've got enough, extra synergy where you can throw them in with a random dwarf squad or a random elf squad.
Yeah.
And you can even take them away from each other and just, I've seen people just put Balin in with elves, for instance, like separate to the Sylvan Brothers, or put him in with just a dwarf squad, and then you've got that flexibility.
Yeah, it's really good, actually. Yeah.
And they designed the kits well in that sense, because the whole theme was like the Shatter timeline where the dwarves and elves help each other, right? And that's sort of a bridging between 2 factions. But I thought, that means that they're a team, and but they're going to kind of isolate them, right? Like you kind of just want to keep all of Balin's expedition together, but that has turned out to not be the case at all. And in fact, they work with everything. They work across dwarves and elves, and like people use um Rumel in dwarf comps too.
Mm.
Yeah.
So I've seen Ballin with Rivendell elves, but I've seen Rumel in dwarf comps just because he's got that little bit of synergy with Bifur and being
Yeah.
able to put defensive on everybody, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very impressed with how they did that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was the
100%.
same, actually. I wasn't expecting them to have that much flexibility. I thought it was kind of just going to be its own thing. You really want to keep those core three together, but it's been the complete opposite.
Yeah, I'm hoping they do something similar with, a what if Shadow type situation, or wherever we're headed with the Shadow faction. How are they going to bridge to those factions together? Or are we going to kind of build up one faction that's big enough? Kind of like, I mean, Misty Mountain is a pretty big faction, but you kind of have its own little parts, right? You've got the
Yeah.
goblins in there and then kind of the orcs with Bolg.
Hmm.
Are we going to get something like that? Or are we going to get a bridging of two factions like we did for dwarves and elves? Nick mentioned in the Tana interview that he kind of said he has this vision of making this big interconnected web of like characters, essentially, you can pick and choose from and pull from and theory craft from. And I don't know, I guess I'm starting to see what he meant by that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
To be honest, like coming from MSF where everything was prescribed,
Strict
like
teams. Yeah.
it got to a point where they came out with a team. You had to build that team. Like each raid, there was a set team.
Yeah.
That was assigned to that raid, and it just became boring because you were just going through the motions. You were just following their lead. Weren't really thinking for yourself, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a much better model in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that's why I fell in love with Star Wars so much, because playing MSF for I think the 3 or 4 years that I did, and then going to Star Wars and having the flexibility of that, and two, the speed manipulations, where in MSF you don't have that. It just made for a completely different game, even though it's two not very big things, but yeah.
And it's relatively balanced with those two things as well, right? Which is
Yeah.
surprising. And I think they do maybe have to rebalance some things at times when, somebody in the community figures out some crazy interaction that
Yeah.
absolutely breaks the game, right? But
Yeah.
I actually think that that's also a good thing. Like, yes, they'll take care of it, but community members going out and looking for those weird interactions and weird team comps is fun, in my opinion. And yeah, I'm not a big fan of the MSF style either, the cookie cutter teams. I think it puts players in a position where basically, okay, they just get sold the next answer to the question that they posed.
Basically, create the problem, solve the problem.
Yeah, which
solve the
I don't know.
solution. Sorry, yeah.
It's not my favorite.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, so obviously with multi-squad PvP coming, be interesting to see. We spoke about obviously Black Beast and that team not being tailored towards, or it doesn't seem like it's tailored towards the raids. I know from beta, the Nazgul team were a heavy PvP team.
Yeah.
And I would imagine they're probably going to be the same here. Now that Chapter 4 is done, I guess our look ahead is multi-squad PvP and also glyphs.
Yeah. I think they'll probably give us enough time to build our glyphs on our characters, and then release the multi-squad PvP, kind of similar to how they did with raids, where they released a whole bunch of characters and then they released the raids.
Yeah, actually, that's really good thinking. I think that's probably right. Do you think Black Beast has what it takes to be anti-Elrond at the moment? Just him. I guess we haven't seen the other two kits, right? But like, let's just say Black Beast and the Dol Guldur allies, whatever they may be.
I think it's too. I think Elrond will still do better just because he has the revive.
Right. It's unclear, right? It's like
Yeah.
not. It's not. You look at Black Beast kit and it's like, well, it's got some stuff, right? He's got lifesteal. He's got AOE. Not AOE, but like he's got heal block that can go around taunts, right?
Yeah.
Which I think is a big part of that toolkit he would need to take down Elrond. But
Yeah.
it's not. It's kind of weird because it's not like, oh yes, we're now selling you the how to beat Elrond team, right?
Mm.
Which I don't mind, because if they released a team that could easily defeat Elrond, that creep is going to significantly increase. Like Elrond was already a significant power creep when he came out. To have another team that could just annihilate Rivendell would, like, within a year of release, have two massive power creeps, right? And I don't think that would be the right way to go. I think the way, like, looking at it, and like, we've only got his kit, obviously, but I think there's enough there that makes me think they could go kind of blow for blow with the Rivendell team.
Yeah.
That like you mentioned, the AOE heal block and stuff like that. In my mind, you know, with Rivendell team, you've got the revive, but he can only revive once, and once he does revive, it's on a cooldown. So the way I see potentially with this team is they chip away and they kill more than one at a time. And then that way, you know, even if Elrond's still alive, it's a struggle for him to bring that team back, right? Yeah. Like, he's only going to randomly bring one back. And then, you know, if that's not Eladin, there's no one protecting Elrond. You can just go at him.
It's true.
Yep.
It seems like a very long fight.
Yeah, timeout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm wondering then, maybe the play that they're going for here is Black Beast and the Dol Guldur are good, and they can like kind of go blow for blow with maybe like a baby Elrond team, something that's not super beefed up, but you need the next, whatever the next legendary is, you need the next legendary to kind of help you along and be able to actually take down the Elrond team. And then that would kind of maybe solve or / be an answer to the power creep situation where, okay, yes, the team that does take down Elrond is power crept, but it's also the next legendary that does that, in which case it's maybe on par but slightly above.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Elrond. That kind of leads me to believe that the next legendary is going to be Shadow.
Yeah, so I, for the longest time, was thinking Thorin. I mean, it was like the age of dwarves with the releases that we've had. But I think it was in one of the recent blog posts, whether it was Black Beast or Dark Sorcery Month, they make a reference to Necromancer, I believe, in one of those blog posts.
Yeah, quite a few.
3 times.
Yeah.
Was it 3 times? Yeah. So I'm leaning towards Necromancer, and it would make sense.
Yeah.
To be honest.
I have my prediction, which I will say I have maybe about 50% confidence in on like a good day, is that, it will be Necromancer, but it will be a dwarf unlock. And so they'll kind of like shift to opposing factions unlocking the legendary like they have in Swigo a lot of the times.
Yeah.
But also, additionally, this is the little extra added bonus thing, is that the Necromancer will also either be or kind of transform into the large shadow character that we're also expecting by the end of the year.
True.
That's my little pet conspiracy theory about what's going to happen.
I completely forgot about that, actually. Yeah.
So we don't have that long, and Nick mentioned in the Tana interview that we would see a shadow large character before the end of the year. I guess that's all subject to change. But we probably we have these 3: Black Beast, Charu, Rekka. That'll take up November. They might add another one at the end of November, maybe, right? And then they've got probably like 2 weeks in December.
Yeah.
That they could do stuff. So we're looking at, if the legendary does come at the, in those like kind of last week in November, 2 weeks of first 2 weeks of December sort of situation. And then maybe one more marquee in there. I don't know.
It'd be a tight month.
Yeah.
Would be.
My wallet's already screaming.
One marquee month.
Yes.
Would be pretty ruthless. That would be pretty ruthless. Maybe they'll just put it in, start it on December 1st though. And then it doesn't count as a 4 marquee month.
Yeah, or squeeze it in end of November. I thought they probably can, right?
Yeah, I think they'll be able to.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to see. They've had a lot of, and I've been pleasant to see a lot of bug fixes. I think you mentioned earlier that we've had 3 patches in, I think, 3 weeks.
Yep.
Yeah.
Pretty frequently, and significant kind of fixes as well. In most cases, some of them, like the Elrond here, I don't think they've fixed because.
Nope.
I was so happy with that. And the next immediate arena fight, and he's doing his slow motion. Just like,
yeah, it's true. Yeah, he's got the Matrix style slow motion era that he fires back.
Yeah,
but he also he still doesn't retaliate when somebody gets hit on their last provoke. And I think at this point they're just going to change the wording.
Yeah, is that a bug though? They haven't come out and said it's a bug, have they?
I think it's on Trello.
It
but
is?
Whether they
Okay.
consider it a bug, I think it's still under the status investigating. And I'm not sure they've been updating Trello as frequently as they were previously. But we'll see. My guess on that one is that they're just going to change the wording because now it seems like everything's balanced with that in mind. And if Elrond here gets an extra retaliate in, I do think that would actually be pretty significant.
Yeah, with how hard he hits, definitely.
Yeah. So we'll see. There's still, so it's kind of weird. They've done a lot of good stuff and bug fixes. There's still some stuff like from when the game launched that has not been fixed. Like when you buy something in this is annoying to me. When you buy something in the store and it automatically
takes you back to the top.
Way back up. And like the weekly store reset comes around and you're trying to buy stuff. And like the stuff that you can buy as a free-to-play player is all the way at the bottom, right?
Yeah.
So you sit there and you scroll and you buy one thing and then it just zooms you all the way back up. It's like, come on, man. I just want to get the ability materials and
maybe it's the supermarket analogy where you go through all the stuff just to get the milk that you want.
Exactly. Yeah, it probably is. It probably is like intended, but it's just annoying.
It is. It's tedious.
Yeah, exactly. I'm glad to see that all the bug fixes they're doing. There's still some, they still got to crack down on some of these, but like, I don't know. Now that the raid is out of the room, they are kind of doing the thing that a lot of people wanted them to do, which is like take a breather for a second, fix some in-house stuff.
Well, that's what you mentioned on your video the other day. It's like now that the raid is finally out, it's finally finished, they're actually just really hammering down on all the bugs.
Yeah. And it's good to see.
Yeah, definitely.
We've had 3 new characters become farmable. So Bifur, Aeldred, and Brute. Brute, I'm super happy with.
Is on such a good node with the resist essence. That is such a god tier node.
I've started farming him on my free to play account. I don't even know where I'm going to use him, but just getting the shards.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I mean, I've always said like I've preferred him over Ironhide. Like I think he's got a much better kit with the cooldowns and whatnot.
Yeah, the cooldowns when he gets hit, he applies poison and all that as well.
Yeah. And if, Misty Mountain ever, get a legendary or anything like that,
right?
I think they've got a good team. They're just missing something.
Yeah, they're missing
exactly.
They're missing that key part, which is probably Azog. to be honest, whenever he comes. But
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what I can't pinpoint exactly what they're missing either. Like what they
Mm,
would need kit wise. I guess I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about it, but I I still think it's probably worth it to farm up these large characters, even though they don't do that well in the raids. They can do okay in chapter one, in my kind of estimation, but like you're not gonna put Ironhide or the Brute into chapter three and expect them to be doing well.
nah.
too
Chapter
slow.
four, definitely not, right? Yeah, they're
Yeah.
just blinded the entire time in chapter four. Chapter two, they're okay, I
Mm,
guess. But again, it's just they're just slow, right?
yeah.
But
Yeah.
when multi-squad PvP does kind of come around, I do think, as we saw in the first months of this game, that was just so where everything was so arena focused, they do make a significant difference there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. I think that's in multi-squad PvP, they're going to be really impactful. Yeah, the large characters.
Yeah. So it's probably worth it to start farming up Brute, especially if you're, get him from the hard node, then get him from the web store every day too, right? And you're gonna have him in faster than you would if he was just on a hard node. I haven't done the math, but
Yeah.
I'm still getting 1 shard a day from the web store.
Really?
In our previous podcast, I assumed everyone was getting 1 shard per day until Minzy was like, "No, you can get up to 5." And I clicked on the thing, and I was like, "Oh, son of a bitch! Like, why am I just getting 1? I just assumed everyone was getting 1s."
I've pretty
giving your shards to
consistently
me,
got
so
3.
thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Oh yeah, RNG is never my friend. 7 years to Beb. That's now, thankfully, a fix.
Sort of fixed.
Yeah, it is quicker. Like if you look at the maths, it's going to be quicker.
Yeah,
Significantly.
Yeah. Like I didn't farm her prior when she was at a more expensive rate. I was just continuing on with my Halbrad.
Yep.
Now I've got Halbrad to 6-star. I've gone, do I continue with another 300 shards to get him to 7? Like I'm at that crossroad, and I've switched to Beb now that the pricing's a bit better and more consistent.
Yeah.
The challenge store fixes, I like them. I still think they can be a bit better. We'll see, because they haven't come through with all of the changes that they've said they're going to do.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And it's like Minzy said, it's a band-aid. It's a quick. I'm very happy with how they responded and the speed with which they responded. This sort of
To tie over
have,
until the actual fix. Yeah.
Exactly. And that the fix that needs to come is just an increase probably in the amount of challenge currency we get, or some other way to kind of get those tokens, right? And then
they put in the daily objectives, I think.
Something like that. I've heard that. Yeah, is a good good option.
Yeah.
But
or
I mean,
maybe even just add something new, like a type of new PvE type thing that we can do, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've said that in the beta, they had basically weekly guild challenges, which you could do.
They had the milestones, right? Like yeah. Whatever they're called, battle pass type milestones.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
And yeah, they could just add them in there. I can't remember if they were in the beta, but yeah, something like that, something simple would fix
and
it.
it gives you more stuff to do in the game, like throughout the week as well. Just like kind of little objectives to do. It just makes it feel more engaging.
Yeah, I still think we didn't need to get to this stage with the 7-year to Beb meme and all that, because everyone's been saying like it's going to take them years to get Halbrad. Even if you just focus on Halbrad, just ignore Bolg, it's going to take you years, and Bolg's just forgotten. And they knew, like, it was a constant feedback, as in challenge store needs to be fixed. Yeah. And then they release a new character into the store without the fix. I mean, like, what were they expecting?
Yeah.
I don't know what they were expecting. It surprised me to see that. It kind of, I was thinking about where they were going to put her
Hmm.
And I thought, yeah, it's probably going to be a store. And I thought, well, they can't put her in Guild Store, which is like the only other store they could put her in at the time, right? Because Wubate is already in there.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh no, they're either gonna put her on a hard node, which will be fine, or they're just gonna stick her in the challenge store. They probably had that plan from months and months ago. And
Yeah.
then they just completely forgot about this after all of the chapter one stuff
Hmm.
came out, right? And that's what it seems like to me anyway. It's just like they were concerned with fixing chapter one, and then they just kind of dropped the other stuff they were maybe considering. And then this shipped out, and they're like, oh, wait a second.
Yeah.
But they had meetings about it the same day that kind of it got released, right? Which is,
Hmm.
I mean, I don't work in that industry, but it seems fast to me for that to be the case.
Yeah. Yeah, usually I'm pretty sure in MSF, if something like this would happen, it'd be like, oh yeah, we'll address it next week in our weekly
Right.
meeting type of thing. So to see it have a meeting like on the day is actually quite surprising.
Yeah.
It
Or
was
like
good to see.
we have to get like, over 50% of the envoys in our envoy program to say
Yeah.
something about this or something like that. Whereas in this case, it was, just a feedback post on the official Discord that got upvoted into the
Yeah.
stratosphere.
Tom really did
Yeah.
did a good one with that actually. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, he was right too, right? That it was completely unacceptable.
Yeah.
Hmm. But no, I'm glad they didn't have a meeting to then. I think with MSF, like they'll have a meeting and then they'll have another meeting, and it just
Pretty much.
just levels of bureaucracy.
Yeah.
I'm
Have the
glad
meeting
it's
to
not the
set up the
case.
next meeting.
Yeah,
Mhm.
the pre-meeting.
Yeah.
The pre-meeting meeting. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's that they've been on top of it. And sort of my mantra that I have developed when doing all of this content creation stuff now, because I'm completely new to this stuff,
Hmm.
is just credit where credit is due. So when they do things that are good and like objectively good, you say yes, that was good. That way, when you say things that are bad, everybody is not like, that's just swag. He just says things are bad all the time, and like, I don't know, it decreases the sort of value of any actual like feedback or criticism you have, in my opinion. And I think they've been pretty responsive to that now, because people do give them credit when they get credit, and then when people are upset, they know about it and they go, "Oh, people are actually really upset about this."
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
But that's my take on it. But I think the community at large is like that as well, which is awesome to see. People aren't super sensationalist. You've got a few people who are, but like
Generally speaking, yeah.
I think
agree.
people are really level headed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's been a good community. I don't know the Swagger community because I never played it. MSF, it has had its up and downs in terms of community, but yeah, I haven't seen the same level of the same level of enthusiasm and backing that this community has had. But it seems to be like similar to like when you look at speaking of memes, when you look at like and this is outside of the games, when we're talking about like the fans of the movies and stuff like that, you see the memes of like the Star Wars fans always like hating on any sort of Star Wars movie and show.
Yeah.
And the Lord of the Rings fans are usually pretty complimentary of the works that come out, except for Ring of Power. That's
I people
think
did not like Ring of Power.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some things I like about Ring of Power. The costumes were really great, and like the cinematography and like set and stuff. We won't have to go into this, but like, yeah, I don't know, man. It just sort of fizzled out for me.
Yeah, it definitely had its problems.
Yeah. Maybe the difference though between a game like MSF and Swigo and this, and why we don't see a lot of that, is it just scale? Is it because those other games just have such a bigger community that we
Yeah.
seeing the same type of things, you know?
That's probably true. I mean, like
Yeah.
if in a percentage base, we probably have the same number of
Right.
negative naysayers, but they're just not big numbers because it's a smaller community, and that could be the case.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like I did moderate the official server, and I haven't seen too many people get aggro. You get the odd people that get frustrated, and it's like frustration's understandable, but
Yeah.
the level of toxicity has been very minimal, I found.
Yeah. Which is why it's an on, it's a game, and two, it's like a mobile game. And I don't know, I've found that people can be relatively toxic.
Yeah.
It's just not here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully it stays that way.
Yeah, that's until they release Guild versus Guild.
Yes.
Oh yeah, PvP. It always brings the best out of people.
Yeah, exactly. Then
Oh,
it'll
boy.
just be a shit show.
Speaking of community, though, I don't know if you guys saw this, but I saw on Reddit the other day that there was a video that a YouTube channel that CG collaborated with. It was basically like a behind the scenes Lord of the Rings home type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
It was actually a pretty big YouTube channel as well. And so I'm just kind of glad to see that they're advertising, essentially.
Did you see the comments though?
I did not read the comments.
Did you watch the video?
Yeah, it was only about 9 minutes long.
Right. That, to me, I watched it as well. It blows me away that they were using like beta footage and like screenshots from Tana's interview and like beta promotional materials. And the game just doesn't look like that anymore. So like, you remember like when this on launch, even people started playing the game, they're like, why does it look like this?
Yeah.
Why is it? And like since then, they've actually done a number of like graphics updates, at least a big one, and it looks pretty good now. Like it looks great. Yeah. But this channel, which as you mentioned was going to, I don't know, it has like I want to say over 1 million subscribers, but maybe it's just hundreds of thousands.
Pretty sure it was a few million.
Yeah. But they're using beta footage.
Yeah.
And like nothing about the Balrog, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
It blows me away that like that was allowed to go, like that was what went out. Because it's not a good like snapshot of the game.
Yeah, that's true. I actually saw a screenshot the other day that I took of when I unlocked Elrond, and just seeing the graphical difference from that month to the game now, I'm just like, wow, it's really improved.
Yeah,
it really has. It was one of the biggest criticisms when the game launched was they were still using Swaggo level graphics, like 8-year-old graphics.
Yeah.
But they've dramatically improved that since. And you're right, I haven't seen the video, so I can't really comment, but it is a bit confusing when you had Balrog and other content that's in the game that you use beta, like footage from the beta. It just
yeah. I don't understand that decision, and I don't think that is the way to draw new players in. But yeah, like you said, Minzy, it's good to see that they're starting to try and do that, right?
Yeah. The channel has 2.4 million subscribers, so it's pretty sizable channel.
Pretty decent,
yeah. That's, they're not messing around.
Yeah.
It's like a retro video game channel.
Yeah.
So the only angle I can think of is like, oh, these people don't actually won't care about the graphics because they love retro video games so much anyway. But I don't know. I'm not sure I buy that.
Should have released an 8-bit version of the game then.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy 1 graphics.
8-bit version of the soundtrack might go hard though.
Yeah.
That's true. I honestly don't play many mobile games with sound on.
Yeah.
To be honest. Although I did on this game recently with the raids, like the Balrog fight and stuff like that. I thought it was quite decent. Like I'm not sure how Swaggo was, but MSF the audio had to be hands down the worst part of the game.
Yeah.
It just straight up wouldn't work sometimes.
Yeah, I remember.
I would just do funky things.
Yeah.
Just bad.
Yeah.
Speaking of raids, now that we've got the full 4 chapters and stuff like that, what are you guys' thoughts on the raids? Obviously, with chapter 1, we've had, since its launch, tweak, which, community wide has been widely appreciated.
Best chapter.
Hands down, best chapter. Yeah. But now that we've got Balrog as well to finish off the chapter, whilst hard, I think is a good way to finish the raid. You wouldn't want an easy kind of finish, I would suspect. And they're obviously looking ahead for this to be long term and, for glyphs to also play a part. So
yeah,
I don't mind the high level of entry that chapter 4 seems to have, but I think that there's enough in there where you can kind of see that when you get stronger, you will get better. Whereas chapter 1 originally didn't have that kind of assurance.
Yeah, we don't talk about the old chapter 1.
Somebody the other day told me they actually preferred the old chapter 1, and I think I just messaged back. I forget who it was. So I just messaged back like, huh? Wait, what do you mean? Are you just saying that to be edgy? Like what do you mean? That doesn't make any sense. I'm sorry. It's much better. I'm glad they got it out. I think they could do some touch-ups on chapter 4 specifically in terms of atmosphere and aesthetic, or maybe something kind of reward based, right? Like the background, the Balrog looks amazing. But the background maybe could be spruced up a little bit. And I think speaking of game music, I think they should have like a different sort of song or something, a different type of battle music for when you are playing against the Balrog. It's sort of kind of like a finale.
Yeah.
Where do you guys come down on? A lot of people were asking like, oh, do you get anything once you? I mean, you're not really completing the raid. Like, do you get anything special when you fight the Balrog or whatnot? And I've been spending a lot of time thinking about that, and I do think they should add something in. And it doesn't have to be something economy based, but even doing something, rolling out some sort of like achievement system, right? And that being one of the achievements, having it be something, they have this in Swigo where you have like titles.
Just about to say that, yeah.
Profile picture, things that you can update and whatnot. That would be a good candidate for it. What do you all? Do you think that they should have something?
Definitely.
Kind of at the end?
I think the face of a Balrog as my portrait. Yes, give me that, please.
That would be dope. And they have it. It's in the game files. They have the character UI.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, entitled Durin's Bane or something like that.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
There does need to be some sort of completion to the raid, something simple like aesthetically, like titles or avatars or something like that is an easy implementation, in my opinion, that they could do for that.
Yeah. Hopefully, if they like rebuild out and expand the quest system that they had, because that was just useless to some degree. I mean, it's great when you're early on and it's like telling you what you should do next, basically. And I think that part is fine, but it just drops off so fast.
Yeah.
And there's no achievements tied into it. So that I expect, I would hope that they kind of relook at that in the future here.
I was expecting more quests like when the raids came out. Like it finished and I thought, okay, well, that's because there's nothing really else in the game. We're just playing arenas. But once raid came out, I was expecting more quests, like,
right.
His raids go and do like X amount of damage or something. I don't know, some sort of kind of goal, to be honest, aside from the individual chapter goals that you have. But there's something that they can do with quests. again, that was something similar with the battle pass milestone that they had in the beta as well.
Yeah.
I think they'll get to it eventually.
I hope they do something with multi-squad PvP where I'm pretty sure in Swoggle they have, so it's like there's 7 tiers, and if you complete tier 1, you get like Sith Assassin, tier 2 Sith Warrior, tier 3 Sith Master, something like that. And it's just like kill 500 of this type of character in Grand Arena, and tier 2 is like kill this type of character 1,000 times. It just keeps going up and up type of thing, and you just kind of get cooler titles.
Yeah. And you don't have to do a bunch of simulations on that to like see if it'll ripple out through the economy in a bad way. So those are, and I understand it's maybe not the highest priority. They wanted to get raids out, right? And they're working on these other systems. They want to get the content out first, and this is kind of gloss, frosting on top.
Yeah.
I do hope they eventually kind of relook at that system and revamp it.
Yeah.
So now that raids are out, I guess glyphs is really next in line. And we're looking, we're start of November. We've got 2 more months before the end of the year. Do you think we're going to get glyphs by Christmas?
I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah.
They had some stuff they put in there with the newest data mine,
That's
which
true,
I'm trying to parse through and understand to the best of my ability. But it looks like they've started to add some stuff. We're also expecting a quarterly update. That should be coming in November at some point as well. So I imagine that will contain stuff related to glyphs, stuff related to the legendary, all of that sort of coming at the end of the year here. But the way I'm kind of thinking about it is we have raids, and glyphs are going to kind of take a look back at the content that they have released and help you do better in raids. But it's also a progression system to prepare you for multi-squad PvP, kind of like, Lindsay, how you mentioned earlier that they had to release a bunch of characters first, and then they could release the raid so that you could actually take more than 2 teams in there, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of the progression bridge between the 2 pieces of content that they kind of want to lay out.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be by end of year. I don't know if they're going to get to multi-squad PvP by the end of the year, though. That seems out of reach.
Yeah.
No, I mean, like, if we're thinking they're going to have glyphs and then a legendary, also releasing multi-squad PvP, I think is too much of an ask. Realistically, that's probably going to be the first quarter of the new year.
Yeah, I think probably February, maybe late January, early February.
Yeah,
maybe even mid-February.
I can see that. Yeah.
That makes sense to me. And they didn't say that they were going to release multi-squad PvP this year. They said it was a possibility, but probably, I think, quarter 1 next year was when it was originally slated.
Yeah. I think that's still going to be the case. So speaking of next year, though, do you think it's going to be Shadow Year? Predominantly speaking? Well, not the whole year, but predominantly speaking.
Predominantly? No. I think they'll try and split it. Because the game's been around for like what, 6 months?
About 6 months, yeah.
Feels longer because we were beta players, but 6 months. About 6 months.
Yeah, I think they're gonna probably split it again.
Yeah.
And do light. But I don't know. I mean, they do like to switch off between light and shadow types legendaries in Swigo. And so I expect them to follow a similar model here.
Yeah.
Do you think it's going to be like a shadow year?
I think at least the start of the year. Like maybe the first kind of 6 months, maybe. I think it's going to be very heavy shadow.
Yeah.
I agree.
I think it's going to probably be more than the quarter, like the first quarter of next year, because it will create another crystal crunch and money.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, I think we're on the same page there. I agree.
All right. Well, I think we've covered all the topics we wanted to cover for this episode. Usually on our podcast, we just give our listeners an update on our roster. So I'll start with mine. I finished off my Rivendell team to level 60. I've turned towards the dwarves just because they seem like a good kind of team as well. So I've got Gimli that's now level 60. Now that Bifur's farmable, I'm farming him and also leveling him up with the limited XP that I have. Purples are a killer. I wanted to finish Rivendell, but I kind of pivoted. They're at a spot where they get 900 easily in chapter 1 for me, so I wasn't too fast. Chapter 2, obviously, that's where getting the extra purples would, sorry, not Rivendell, Road to Rivendell, would help Road to Rivendell.
I was gonna say, like, how have you only got your Rivendell to 60 now?
It's for the record, it's 2 a.m. here. Road to Rivendell. That's who I got to 60. I wanted to finish their purple mats because for chapter 2, at least, I need that extra damage that I would get from getting their level 6 abilities, but I just prefer the Balin team overall, and I think they'll do better. So I'm kind of parked them for now, Road to Rivendell, and I'm going to finish the dwarves / Balin team, and that's kind of where I'm at. As with each week, it's the purples. I'm getting, probably like 2 or 3 upgrades per week. That's how slow it's been.
Yeah, definitely. Now that I've got most of my RTR abilities to like the level 5 and 6, it's taking a lot longer than I thought it would. I've started leveling up my Legolas, and hopefully I can actually get a decent score in chapter 2 with him. And then I'll probably move on to Rohan and finish them off, since I've neglected them for so long.
I'm at a unique points in my main account roster where there's one character that I am actively leveling and gearing, and I don't want to do anything outside of that, and it's Fro, just to sort of round out my dwarf squad. But everybody else is gear tier 8s and level 60 that I want to bring up. I'm not currently interested in R2R. So I have 5 raid teams that I think do decently well, and then a decent little bench of plug and play characters that I feel like I can sub in. So that's probably one of the reasons I will go for Black Beast, is because I don't feel like the other characters I have right now are worth bringing up in that way. But I have so many ability. I'm so behind on abilities. It feels very weird because I have these level 60 gear tier 8 characters, and then they're still like ability level 4.
Yeah.
And still kind of not great at that ability level. So I'm currently working on finishing. I really want to finish off my dwarves and Balin's expedition. I think they have just great utility and plug and play viability, and they just work very well in the raids as well. On my free to play account, I just got Elrond. Nice. So I'm going to be working on that. He's only 5-star, but just making sure that he gets to where he needs to be. And then actually started farming dwarves on that account too, just because I think they have a pretty good, viability in terms of raids as well.
Yeah. No, it's a good point that you make about 5 teams, and I've mentioned it to people in our guild as well. It's easy to kind of get lost with, especially with the amount of new characters coming out and whatnot. But unless you're a big spender, just pick 5 teams and just focus on that, and that's probably the best way forward, really.
Yeah, I do feel like people got a little bit of the short end of the stick with Isengard, right? They're a great PvP team, and they're pretty good in the first 2 chapters, but they fall off relative to the other raid teams in the other 2 chapters, right? No matter pretty much how much investment you put into them.
It's similar to Mortar, Mortar as well. Exactly. It was a similar team. But in saying that, I don't think it's it sucks for the latter chapters, but I think they'll be good PvP teams. Like they have been good PvP teams, and with multi-squad PvP coming, it's not like it's been wasted.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think. Go ahead.
I was going to say that's another reason why I wanted to get my Rohan up is I need a good Elrond count.
Yeah.
For PvP.
Yeah, I just feel like Rohan does edge them out in both raid viability and if also, I mean, PvP, they're pretty good as well. I don't think it's wasted ultimately, but it does feel bad when you're like, oh, I was getting my 5 teams up and one of them turns out not good and 2 out of, half of the raid.
Yeah.
Which kind of sucks, especially because they sort of push you towards that team at the start of the game.
I think it's not wasted though, because there's still a decent campaign team with all the sustain that they have.
You basically need them to get to Arwen.
Yeah, yeah. So it's definitely not wasted, but it's just you don't really want to take them past that level, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. Limited investment, maybe.
Yeah, yeah.
But I mean, there's still the Luminous Crystal challenge as well.
Yes.
That a lot of people still haven't. No, because they're humans and goblins.
Oh,
the human goblin. So
okay, you're talking about the light one.
Yeah, the luminous crystal, the light crystal.
Okay. Yeah, sorry.
Because I think the only real viable options at the moment are Haradrim, Rohan trio with Hellstrider or Gondor. But I think for most people, it's they're only going to have built or access to Rohan trio and your Hellstrider combo. I ended up finally doing it with Haradrim, but my Haradrim are all at least 5 stars. Well, actually, Tebeb's 5 stars, the rest are all 7. And level 60 G8. So it took a bit to get there to get that final tier. But I know a lot of people have been doing it with Rohan team. So I think for free-to-play players, I still recommend Rohan Trio as the best team to go for.
Yeah, I think so. And I think often people get like, yeah, you should be farming up your elves, but who do you do as like a 3rd raid team or 4th raid team if you're, if you're using Legolas kind of with catch-all elves? I think a lot of people recommend R2R because they do very well in across the raids. I'm wondering once, Balin's expedition and now that all the other dwarves are basically farmable, if that priority is going to shift to dwarves, some combination of them. I'm not completely sold that that's going to be the case, but I think there's a possibility that might be a route to go down. I'm testing 3-star level 40 gear tier like for Balin's expedition and Bifur and Gimli. I guess Gimli's 5-star on my free-to-play account, and they do pretty decently in the raid, even at that level of investment, where I didn't have to use any luminous crystals. And level 40 XP wise is not too bad.
Yeah.
So with like a limited investment, it seems to be performing decently. But I'm not completely convinced, but I think it's an option.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good point. I think this has been a pretty big episode for us. Obviously, with Swag here joining us, so it's been a pleasure having you here with us, mate. Really enjoy. Yeah, we've really enjoyed your content.
Thank you.
We usually reference some of the stuff that you talk about in some of our podcasts as well.
Yes.
So it's an honor to have you here with us, and congratulations also for doing the showcase for Black Beast as well. It's good that you had that spotlight. You definitely deserve that. So thank you again, and you're always welcome to come back if you choose to. But
this was a lot of fun, and I'm sorry if it's super late because we just got to talking and now Yeah, now it's a 2-hour long episode. Sorry. I like talking about the game. I do like talking about
it's fine. Like we always aim for like an hour for our thing, and it just goes because we just talk and talk and talk. Right. So this is no different.
Yeah.
Okay.
But no, it was a pleasure having you here, and for you guys listening, I hope you did enjoy this episode. If you did like this episode, please give us a like, and feel free to give us any sort of comments on whether you liked it or if you want to see other types of content or anything else. Please feel free to leave a comment. Until next time, we'll catch you guys next.